I play a character named Lefou in Beauty and the Beast. Lefou is sort of the sidekick to the main antagonist in the film, played by Luke Evans, named Gaston. And the two of them are sort of coming back from, war. And Gaston is this very central figure in this community, in this French village. And Lefou is almost a historian celebrating his legacy and always there to remind the public how important his contributions were. It's sort of like if Napoleon Bonaparte had a little sidekick, this would be him. Right, well, I think that there's that sort of second golden age of Disney animation from Little Mermaid to Lion King, which includes Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin, that was such a pivotal part of my childhood. And I think that a big part of the reason that those movies work is because the music is so instantaneously classic. I mean, you can't leave the theater without those songs becoming immediately iconic and a part of your musical vocabulary. So when those films came out, whether it was songs like Be Our Guest or Under the Sea or Gaston, you would sing them. I remember going to school and that everybody would be singing and humming those songs. And it's rare that you get to be a part of a legacy like that. If you do one, that's impressive. But for the Menken and Ashman collaboration to have produced at least 3 of the most iconic scores of all time, I think it's one of the great accomplishments of film. The beauty, no pun intended, of Bill Condon is that he's a very intimate director, right? So many of his films have an intimacy to them that begins with a character study, that begins with, the characters being fully fleshed and realized characters, and it builds around that. So to do a big tent pole like this with, these incredible sets and this epic wonderment that comes with it, to have somebody like Bill Condon who grounds it all with these amazingly fleshed out characters and make sure that the intimate moments are what the audience really leaves with an emotional response to, that's everything for him. And I think that makes for a very impressive fusion of big spectacle and having that emotional response that a movie like this warrants. What I wanted to do was make sure that this character wasn't necessarily a carbon copy of what he is in the original movie. Because in the original movie, because it's a cartoon, you can get away with a lot more broad comedy. And, he gets his teeth knocked out and he gets burnt and he gets thrown. And there's a lot of crazy physical comedy that I don't necessarily think translates to this version of the film. So it was about figuring out, how do we change things up? How do we make him more human, right? And that came with a question of conscience for me. That's where it all started, where I said to Bill, what if it's not as cut and dry as it is in the original? What if he does have questions, this idea of false idolatry or false worship? What does that look like in this particular case? If a guy who he's admired for all these years without questioning is doing things that he has to bring into question, I think that creates for conflict, and that creates for a more interesting 3-dimensionalized version of this character. All of us got in here about a month before cameras started rolling, and, usually a rehearsal process for a film, it ranges between 2 weeks and, sometimes even a week or a few days. Beauty and the Beast was not one of those, was definitely an exception to that. We got here about a month before, and immediately, like you would prepare for, a musical theater piece, we were in a rehearsal space in our sweatpants, and we were going to town. Our brilliant choreographer, Anthony, he really did an amazing job of creating these iconic songs from scratch and giving us input into that process. And so with a song like Gaston, it was all mapped out beforehand, but when we got in the room, there was so much space for discovery. And coming from musical theater myself, from things like Spelling Bee and Book of Mormon, it was an amazing fusion of two of my passions, which are doing musical theater and, of course, doing film, and creating this song for the cameras was a very interesting journey and a very amazing process. The opening number, that it's such a great opening number. Again, a Menken and Ashman gem. It just tells you everything you need to know about this village and about Belle's place in the village. And that was, to me, that was so fun for different reasons, because it's a complete opposite of Gaston, which is in this intimate space. They recreated this entire French village on the back lot, and you have, all of these moving parts, over 100 extras in background who are all have to be in sync, walking in and out of this incredibly vast space and doing it in a manner that is precise. And us coming in on horses, which, as I've explained, is not my forte. It all just melded beautifully and just looks incredible. And of course, Emma, who I think is going to surprise so many people with her gorgeous voice and playing a character that is so unlike some of the other characters she's played, just establishes the tone of the film immediately when you see her walk in. And I think that, it really sets up the film beautifully. Yeah, so for the mob song, that was all night shoots, and that was, it involved a lot of torches. And again, it was one of those, it was probably the most difficult song to film, because so much of it is taking place out of sequence in different places. So, it starts off in this village, and you've got this mob building up and burning things, and then we're walking through the woods, and then we're walking up to the castle gates. And so when you do something like that, it's really spread out. So one day you'll come into work and you'll do 5 scenes, and then at the end of the day, you realize you have 2 lines of song that you have to get, which is you on horses storming into the castle. So that song was weird, because it was very much out of order and spread throughout the course of the film. I've always been a fan of Luke from his action films and from all of the things that I've seen him in, whether it's Fast and the Furious or the Hobbit films. What surprised me so much were 2 things. One is he is genuinely has one of the funniest, most sardonic senses of humor I've ever seen, and it comes so easily to him. And when the cameras are on, he just goes to this place that you can't imagine another person playing Gaston. You really can't. And then the second thing that blew me away was this voice. He has this incredible voice, and I think a lot of people don't realize, including myself, that he came from musical theater. So he's just got these pipes that are incredible. And from the beginning, he and I spent a lot of time together just getting our rhythm and making sure that our chemistry was, that of 2 people who have been in each other's lives for a long time. And I like to think of them as like a really unhappy married couple or unrequited love, where one of them is always sort of, nagging the other one, and the other one has his eye on a different prize. And I think that that's what made that relationship so fun and so awkward and so delicious to do, because there is that sense of one of them is, obsessed with the other, and the other has no regard for what that person is feeling. So that's sort of what that relationship is, and working with him has been the real pleasure of this shoot.